but something deeper than pride kept her rooted in place. This wasn't about money. It wasn't even about Blake. It was about a promise. A vow made beside a freshly folded flag and sealed in silent grief. Emma turned toward Rebecca. "Do you allow personal equipment on the advanced range?" Rebecca nodded slowly, eyes narrowing in intrigue. "We do." Emma reached into her worn purse once more, this time withdrawing a slim, foam-lined case. Gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd as she unclasped it to reveal a custom matte black Glock, heavily modified, with a titanium slide, match-grade barrel, and grip stippled to perfection. It was Nathan's. A murmur rolled through the room like a low tide. Blake's smirk faltered. This wasn't just any sidearm. It was a tool of a professional maintained with reverence. Emma moved with quiet precision, clearing the chamber, checking the sight alignment, and loading a fresh magazine. Every motion spoke of deep, ingrained discipline. Rebecca stepped aside. "Range 7 is prepped. Take your time, Miss Miller." As Emma walked to the advanced station, silence fell again, thicker now. Even the high society patrons in designer boots and $1,000 jackets leaned forward, curiosity outweighing condescension. Blake crossed his arms, posture stiff. He'd pushed too far, and somewhere in his gut, he knew it. At range 7, Emma squared her shoulders. She exhaled slowly, feeling the familiar anchor of her stance settle in her bones. One shot, dead center. The machine whirred and the target rolled back with mechanical precision. A perfect bullseye. A hush, then a stir. She reloaded. Second shot. Another, crisp echo. This time, a collective inhale from the crowd. Two bullseyes. Blake's jaw tightened, knuckles whitening around the checkbook still clutched in his hand. The third target slid into position. Emma raised the Glock again, and for a moment everything else fell away, no audience, no challenge. Just her, Nathan's voice in her head, and the silence of breath before commitment. Third shot. The recoil was light, almost imperceptible. She already knew before the target returned. 3 bullseyes. Perfect. The room erupted, not in mockery but in stunned, slow-building applause, led, perhaps ironically, by Senator Williams himself. Even Rebecca's usual professionalism cracked into a full smile. Blake didn't move, didn't speak. Emma returned to her station, calmly unloading the Glock, her hands steady, her breathing even. Then she looked up at Blake, just once, and held his gaze. No smirk, no triumph, just calm certainty. Blake's checkbook hung limp at his side. Finally he spoke, voice tight. "You win." Emma didn't answer. She didn't need to. She gathered her things with deliberate care, the weight of her grief momentarily eased by the feel of old steel and the memory of a promise honored. As she turned to leave, Rebecca called after her. "Miss Miller, Emma, there's always a place for you here. Anytime." Emma nodded once, the edges of her mouth lifting in a faint smile. Outside, the cool afternoon air met her like an old friend, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt alive again. One more thing, be careful with Radcliffe. A guy like that with his money and connections, he's not used to losing, and he won't take it well if he does. Emma nodded, appreciating both the warning and the military phrasing. "I will," she said. "And Michael, thanks for watching my 6." Prepared memories of Nathan's lessons filtered through her mind. When the pressure is on, he had told her once, fall back on your training. Let your body remember what your mind might forget under stress. The range had gone completely silent. All attention was focused on the confrontation now unfolding. For the first shot, Emma took slightly longer to aim, adjusting to the increased distance. The crack of the gun was followed by a perfect hit. Blake's jaw tightened visibly. The second shot came more quickly. Emma adjusted her stance minutely before firing. Another bullseye. Before taking the third shot, Emma twisted her wedding ring, Once, feeling Nathan's presence as strongly as if he were standing beside her, the final shot split the air and hit dead center again. Blake's face had drained of color, his expression frozen between disbelief and fury. Rebecca returned with the 3 targets, displaying them for verification. There was no question. 3 perfect shots at a distance that would challenge even experienced marksmen. "Congratulations, Ms. Miller," Rebecca said, unable to keep the admiration from her voice. "That was remarkable." Blake snatched the targets, examining them with increasing desperation. "This is impossible," he hissed. "No one walks in off the street and shoots like this. She must have rigged something." Emma remained calm, though steel entered her voice. "I believe we had an agreement, Mr. Radcliffe." "Agreement with a cheater?" Blake's voice rose. "I'm not paying $50,000 based on some trick," Rebecca intervened. "Mr. Radcliffe, Ms. Miller's performance was witnessed by dozens of members, including Senator Williams. The shots were legitimate." Blake rounded on her, finger jabbing the air inches from her face. "Know your place, Rebecca. 1 word from me to the board, and you're finished here." The threat silenced Rebecca, but her expression hardened. Emma watched the exchange with quiet intensity. "If you're accusing me of cheating," she said evenly, "perhaps we should move this discussion to a more private setting." Blake misinterpreted her intent. "Private? So you can avoid the consequences?" "No. Let's settle this right here." He turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I propose a real challenge. 1 week from today, a formal competition. Me versus our mystery sharpshooter. 10 stations, varying distances, with club-provided equipment to ensure everything's fair." Emma realized she had unintentionally stepped into something much larger than a simple challenge. Part of her wanted to retreat into anonymity, but a stronger part knew she couldn't back down. "I accept," she said quietly. "Same terms. If I win, $50,000 to the Veteran Support Foundation." Blake's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Deal. And when I win, you publicly explain whatever trick you used today." As the crowd dispersed, Rebecca approached Emma again. "That was either very brave or very foolish," she said. "Blake doesn't lose gracefully, and he has considerable influence here." Emma nodded, the adrenaline fading, leaving her feeling drained. "I didn't come here looking for trouble. I just wanted to practice." Rebecca studied her thoughtfully. "Yet you shot like a professional. Who are you really, Emma Miller?" Emma gathered her belongings. "Just someone keeping a promise," she replied, her voice barely audible. What neither Emma nor anyone else knew was that Blake was already making a phone call, instructing his assistant to find out everything about Emma Miller. "No matter what it takes." The tremor in his voice betrayed more than anger. It revealed fear. Because Blake had recognized something in Emma's shooting that the others had missed. The distinctive technique of military training, executed with a precision that couldn't be faked. News of the confrontation spread quickly through Boston's elite circles. By evening, Blake Radcliffe was inundated with messages from friends, rivals, and journalists, all seeking details about the mysterious woman who had challenged his supremacy. Seated in his penthouse overlooking the Charles River, he swirled aged scotch in a crystal tumbler, his post-victory celebration ritual now reduced to a means of calming frayed nerves. Jessica Thompson, his girlfriend, scrolled through her phone, monitoring the social chatter with growing concern. "They're calling her the unknown marksman," Jessica reported. "Someone posted a blurry video of her last shot. It's already got thousands of views." Blake drained his glass. "One lucky day doesn't make her a marksman. By next week, everyone will know she's a fraud." Jessica looked up, her expression unusually serious. "Blake, honey, those weren't lucky shots. I've watched you compete for years. She's good, really good." The sharp ring of his phone interrupted their conversation. Blake checked the caller ID, immediately straightening. "Tell me you found something," he demanded. The voice on the other end was apologetic. "Not much yet, Mr. Radcliffe. Emma Miller, 35, works as a senior accountant at Meridian Financial, moved to Boston from Virginia Beach 3 years ago. Clean record. pays her taxes, keeps to herself, no social media presence, no competitive shooting background. Blake's frustration mounted. That's impossible. Nobody shoots like that, without training. Dig deeper. After ending the call, Blake paced his living room. I don't understand. Who is she? Where did she learn to shoot like that? Jessica sat down her phone, watching him with growing unease. Blake, maybe it's time to let this go. Pay the charity. Chalk it up as an off day. Blake stopped abruptly, turning to her with intensity that made her flinch. This isn't about the money. It's about my reputation, my legacy. Across town, Emma sat at her kitchen table, staring at her phone. Michael Reeves had called 3 times since she'd left the range. The shooting community was smaller than most people realized, especially among those with military ties. Emma brewed a cup of tea and carried it to her small balcony, the events of the day playing through her mind. A part of her regretted accepting Blake's challenge. The attention was unwelcome, yet another part felt strangely liberated, as though something long dormant had awakened. Her phone buzzed again, an unfamiliar number. After a hesitation, she answered. Miss Miller? This is Rebecca Johnson from the Elite Shooters Club. Emma tensed. Ms. Johnson, what can I do for you? Rebecca's voice carried an undertone of urgency. I probably shouldn't be calling, but I thought you should know. Blake has people looking into your background. He's convinced you cheated somehow. Emma closed her eyes, unsurprised but disappointed. Thank you for the warning, Ms. Johnson, but I have nothing to hide. Rebecca continued, her voice lower. Look, I don't know who you are or where you learned to shoot like that, but Blake Radcliffe has a lot of influence in this city. His family practically owns half of Boston. If he feels threatened, he can make things difficult. Emma appreciated the concern. Years as a military spouse had taught her about real threats versus intimidation tactics. I'll be careful, she promised, but I intend to honor our agreement. After the call, Emma opened a small wooden box, Nathan's medals, letters, and their wedding photo. Beneath the folded flag from the funeral lay Nathan's logbook, a record of his training sessions and missions. She flipped through it, finding the pages where he had documented their practice sessions together. His handwriting was precise. Emma, 50 yards, 9-10 bullseyes, natural talent, better than most recruits. The next morning, Emma called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Instead of going to the office, she drove to a public range, far from the elite shooters' exclusive clientele. For 8 hours, she practiced methodically, working through every technique Nathan had taught her. Each shot was a conversation with his memory. A promise kept. A connection maintained across the boundary between life and death. That evening, a text message arrived from Rebecca. Blake requesting rule changes for the competition. Now wants 10 different firearms at varying distances, board approved. Emma understood the implication. Blake was restructuring the competition to showcase the breadth of his experience, areas where she might be vulnerable. Her response was simple. Thank you for letting me know. No changes needed on my end. In his penthouse, Blake received the update with growing satisfaction. Perfect, he told Jessica. 10 different stations, 10 different firearms. There's no way she can match my experience across that range of weapons. Jessica set her wine glass down carefully. And if she does? Blake's smile held no warmth. She won't. But if by some miracle she gets close, I've arranged a little insurance policy. The day before the competition, Michael Reeves finally caught up with Emma by appearing at her door unannounced. You couldn't return a call? He asked, his gruff tone betrayed by the concern in his eyes. Emma let him in, relieved to see a familiar face. I've been busy, she explained simply. Michael surveyed the apartment, noting the shooting manual spread across the table. So, I've heard. The whole community's talking about you and Radcliffe. They sat across from each other at Emma's kitchen table. Nathan would be proud, you know, he said. Not just of the shooting, of you stepping back into the world. Emma's eyes burned suddenly with unexpected tears. I'm not sure that's what I'm doing. This wasn't planned, Michael. He nodded, understanding. The best battles rarely are, Em. But sometimes, they're exactly what we need. He reached across the table, his weathered hand covering hers briefly. You're not alone in this. I've made some calls. There'll be friends in the audience tomorrow. As he prepared to leave, Michael turned back at the door. Thank you for the pass, for everything. His smile was warm. Just keeping a promise to a brother. That's what we do. Blake Radcliffe's investigation into Emma Miller had begun as a matter of wounded pride. By midweek, it had evolved into an obsession that consumed his attention more than any competition preparation ever had. The initial background check had yielded frustratingly little. No criminal record, no competitive shooting history, not even a speeding ticket. On paper, Emma Miller was exactly what she appeared to be. An unremarkable accountant living a quiet life. I want you to focus on Virginia Beach, Blake instructed his investigator. She lived there before Boston. Check shooting clubs, gun ranges, instructors, anyone who might remember her. And that wedding ring she keeps touching. Find out about her husband. The investigator's voice remained professionally neutral, despite Blake's increasingly demanding requests. I'll look into it, Mr. Radcliffe, but marriage records in Virginia— I don't care what it takes, Blake interrupted sharply. The competition is in 2 days. I need information now. After ending the call, he stood before the wall displaying his most prestigious award, the Olympic gold medal from 8 years earlier. The younger Blake in the photograph beamed with genuine joy, an expression that had grown increasingly rare as success accumulated and the pressure to maintain his position intensified. The breakthrough came late that evening, as Blake was reviewing footage of Emma's shooting form. His phone rang, displaying his investigator's number. Virginia Beach was the key, Mr. Radcliffe. Emma Miller is the widow of Master Chief Nathan Miller, U.S. Navy SEAL. Killed in action 3 years ago. Highly decorated sniper, according to my source. Blake felt a chill run through him. A SEAL sniper? Are you certain? Absolutely certain. Miller was known for training his wife. Military buddies called it a hobby, but he took it seriously. One contact remembered him saying she was a natural, with exceptional potential. Is there anything else? Blake asked, his voice carefully controlled. Just one thing, the investigator replied. Miller had a nickname in the teams. They called him the Ghost, for his ability to hit targets no one else could see. He held several unofficial long-distance records within the special operations community. Blake ended the call, sitting motionless as the implications settled over him. Emma Miller wasn't just lucky, and she wasn't a fraud. She was the protege of a legendary military sniper. The narrative Blake had built of exposing an amateur's lucky streak was collapsing. Worse, the alternative narrative forming in its place was far more compelling. The widow of a fallen hero, honoring his memory through the skills he had taught her. A woman challenging the privileged champion who had mocked her. Across town, Emma was unaware of Blake's discovery as she focused on her own preparations. On Thursday evening, she received another call from Rebecca Johnson. Ms. Miller, I wanted to update you on the competition details for Saturday. There's been another change. Blake has requested, and the board has approved, a modification to the scoring system. Each station will now be weighted based on difficulty, with the final station counting for 30% of the total score. Emma absorbed the information, recognizing the strategic manipulation instantly. Let me guess, she said. The final station involves a firearm that Blake particularly excels with. Rebecca's hesitation confirmed Emma's suspicion. It's a custom Macmillan TAC 338, a long-range precision rifle that Blake has exclusive experience with. It's one of only 5 in civilian hands in the Northeast. Emma lightly crossed her arms, calculating the implications. She had extensive handgun training from Nathan, but significantly less experience with specialized long-range rifles. After the call, she sat at her kitchen table, contemplating the development. If Blake was investigating her military connections, It was only a matter of time before he discovered Nathan's identity. The next morning, Emma drove to a specialized range outside the city, where she had arranged private access to practice, with long-range rifles. As she pulled into the parking lot, she noticed a black SUV with government plates. Leaning against it was a tall man with the unmistakable bearing of Special Operations personnel. Mrs. Miller, Commander Wilson, former Team 3. I served with Nathan in Baghdad, in 16. Emma had met many of Nathan's colleagues over the years, though this man wasn't familiar. Commander, I don't recall Nathan mentioning you. The man's expression remained neutral. We weren't in the same squad, ma'am. But in the teams, we all know the Ghost's reputation. He gestured toward the range. Heard you. Might appreciate some pointers on the Macmillan TAC 338. I have some experience with that platform. For the next 4 hours, Commander Wilson guided Emma through the intricacies of the high-precision rifle. Nathan taught you well with handguns, he observed as she completed a series of increasingly accurate shots. You have his patience. And breathing control. This isn't so different, just magnified. Trust what you know. By early afternoon, Emma was consistently hitting targets at distances that would have seemed impossible just days earlier. As they packed up, Wilson handed her a small notebook. Nathan's distance calculations and wind adjustment formulas. He developed them himself. Might come in handy tomorrow. Emma accepted the notebook with reverence. Thank you, Commander. But why are you helping me? You don't know me. Wilson's expression softened slightly. When you lose a brother, in the teams, you look after what mattered to him. Nathan talked about you. How proud he was of your progress, your natural ability. Said you had the calmest hands he'd ever seen on a civilian. As Wilson departed, Emma realized that her private challenge had expanded into something larger, a representation of values beyond the immediate competition. It had become a symbolic confrontation between different worlds, the privilege that Blake embodied versus the quiet excellence Nathan had represented. Flamboyant wealth against understated service. In his penthouse that evening, Blake received the final confirmation of Emma's connection to the legendary SEAL sniper. With each new detail, Nathan Miller's service record, his reputation, the classified circumstances of his death, Blake's confidence eroded further. He poured himself another drink, dismissing Jessica's concerned glance. It doesn't change anything, he insisted. Experience wins over sentiment every time. Jessica watched him with increasing unease. Blake, maybe it's time to reconsider. Pay the charity. Cancel the competition. This is becoming complicated. Blake slammed his glass down. Cancel? And confirm every whisper that I'm afraid of her? No. Tomorrow happens exactly as planned. He reached for his phone, dialing a number from memory. It's Blake. Is everything arranged for tomorrow? The conversation that followed was brief. After ending the call, he turned to find Jessica watching him with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. What was that about? She asked quietly. Blake's smile didn't reach his eyes. Just ensuring a level playing field, my dear. Nothing more. The Elite Shooters Club buzzed with unprecedented activity on competition day. The board had opened the event to the public, transforming a private duel into a premium press spectacle. Inside, Rebecca Johnson supervised final preparations, noting subtle inconsistencies in equipment at several stations, adjustments positioned to disadvantage anyone unfamiliar with the specific firearms. Emma arrived dressed simply, in jeans, and a navy button-down carrying only a small duffel bag containing Nathan's notebook. Rebecca met her privately, voice lowered. I've completed the equipment check. There are irregularities. Nothing I can officially flag, but enough to advantage someone with intimate knowledge of these weapons. Emma nodded. Thank you for letting me know. Blake arrived surrounded by sponsors and entourage, dressed in logo-emblazoned gear. Approaching Emma, his smile failed to reach his eyes. Miss Miller, I trust you slept well. The subtle emphasis on her name confirmed he had uncovered her connection to Nathan. I should warn you, the pressure can be overwhelming for those unaccustomed to the spotlight. No shame in withdrawing. Emma met his gaze steadily. I'll manage, Mr. Radcliffe. My husband taught me about performing under pressure. The competition area resembled a stadium, with digital displays showing scores and 3 certified range masters officiating. As Emma prepared for the first station, she noticed a group of men with unmistakable military bearings seated in the back row. Michael Reeves among them. His subtle nod bolstered her resolve. Through the first stations, Blake's technique showed years of competition experience, flawless and precise. Emma's approach was different, quieter, more economical, with a stillness between shots that spoke of intensive training. By the 4th station, Blake held a slight lead thanks to his polished technique. At the 5th station, Emma noticed the equipment issue. The trigger pull on the Sig Sauer was subtly heavier than standard. She recalled Nathan's words, "Equipment fails. Conditions change. Adapt and overcome." She adjusted her stance and matched Blake's score despite the handicap. As the competition progressed, a pattern emerged. Blake excelled with competition-style firearms. Emma demonstrated remarkable consistency across all platforms, especially military-grade weapons. By the 8th station, Blake's lead had narrowed to a statistically insignificant margin. The audience grew increasingly vocal in support of Emma, captivated by her quiet competence against Blake's showmanship. Before the 9th station, Blake approached Emma. "Impressive performance, Mrs. Miller. Your husband would be proud. The Ghost's techniques are distinctive. I did my homework." Emma's hand stilled momentarily at the deliberate use of the nickname. Nathan's call sign was spoken, but her expression remained composed. She knew he valued integrity above all else. "Mr. Radcliffe," she said coolly, "something to consider as we finish today's competition." When the 9th station concluded, the scores were tied. The competition would be decided entirely by the final, most challenging station, the Macmillan TAC-38 at an exceptional distance. Emma immediately noticed subtle adjustments had been made to the scope and stock. Rather than protesting, she consulted Nathan's notebook, flipping to the formulas he had created for compensating equipment variances. Blake completed his sequence first, placing 9 out of 10 shots within the innermost rings. His final score set a benchmark requiring near perfection from Emma to win. "Not everyone is built for championship pressure," he remarked loudly enough for nearby spectators to hear. Taking her position behind the rifle, Emma felt a peculiar calmness descend. A focused state Nathan had once described from his missions. She adjusted her aim using his formulas, compensating for the sabotage with techniques born of combat precision. Her first shots hit with exact accuracy. By the 6th shot, all bullseyes. The audience leaned forward, breath held in anticipation. As she prepared her final round, a sharp reflection of light flashed across her sight line. A momentary distraction, seemingly from someone near Blake's entourage. Emma paused, then refocused with absolute control. She fired. The final shot landed dead center, a 10th consecutive bullseye, surpassing Blake's score. The crowd erupted in spontaneous applause that swelled into a standing ovation. Final results. Emma Miller first place, Blake Radcliffe second. Rebecca announced it officially. Blake's carefully crafted sportsmanship slipped, revealing raw fury as he offered Emma a perfunctory handshake. "This isn't over," he whispered. Emma replied calmly, "For today it is, and I believe you owe $50,000 to the Veteran Support Foundation." Blake's composure fractured. "You think this proves anything? That a military widow with beginner's luck can replace years of championship experience?" This was nothing but a publicity stunt. His voice carried throughout the now silent room. "The equipment was rigged." "The equipment was rigged, Mr. Radcliffe," Rebecca cut in sharply, holding up her tablet, displaying security footage of Blake's technical advisor tampering with the competition firearms, but not in Ms. Miller's favor. "The club's security system records all access to the equipment room. The revelation sent a wave of shock through the audience, transforming their admiration for Emma's performance into something deeper. Respect. She had achieved excellence. Despite deliberate sabotage, Blake stood frozen, registering not only the loss of the match but the potential collapse of his reputation and career. By Sunday morning, video clips of Emma's perfect final round and Blake's meltdown had gone viral, transforming what began as a niche sports story into a broader narrative about privilege and redemption. Emma awoke to dozens of messages from journalists and sponsors, but responded to none. Instead, she made one call to Michael Reeves. "It's gotten bigger than I expected. What do I do now?" "That depends," Michael replied. "Do you want privacy or justice?" Emma considered. "Blake hasn't paid the donation and the equipment tampering was fraud. There should be consequences." At the Radcliffe penthouse, Blake's crisis team strategized damage control. "We issue a statement," his publicist said. "Blame extreme pressure. Acknowledge a lapse in judgment. Announce a donation to veteran causes. Check into a wellness center." Blake refused. "I'm not apologizing. That woman had military training. That's the real unfair advantage." Their meeting was interrupted by Boston police officers. "Blake Radcliffe, we need you to answer questions regarding allegations of fraud and criminal tampering. We're investigating potential violations of Massachusetts gaming laws, given the substantial wager involved." Meanwhile, Emma met with the Veterans Support Foundation's director, retired Marine Colonel James Harrison. "Several of our board members are also members of the Elite Shooters Club," Harrison explained. "They've initiated proceedings to revoke Mr. Radcliffe's championship records." Then Harrison presented Emma with a proposal. "Our foundation has been developing a marksmanship training program for veterans struggling with reintegration. The therapeutic effects of shooting sports have shown promising results. We'd be honored if you'd consider taking a role in this initiative." 3 days later, Emma reviewed a settlement offer from Blake's legal team, $100,000 donation to the foundation, a public apology, and a request for a private meeting before any statements were released. That meeting took place in a neutral conference room. Blake entered with his attorney, his usual swagger diminished. Designer attire replaced by a conservative business suit. "Mrs. Miller, I want to apologize for my conduct," he said. "The truth is, I've built my identity around being the best. When you threatened that, I reacted poorly, criminally." His rehearsed speech softened. "I've never competed against someone who shoots for reasons beyond trophies or recognition." "It was unsettling." Emma studied him. "Mr. Radcliffe, I didn't enter that competition to unsettle anyone. I was keeping a promise to my husband. Your actions undermined the integrity of a sport you claimed to respect and dishonored the charity you agreed to support." Blake nodded, genuine shame shadowing his face. "That's why I've doubled the donation and accepted the 3-year suspension from competition." The settlement was signed. As they prepared to leave, Blake extended his hand. "For what it's worth, you're the finest shooter I've ever competed against. Your husband taught you well." Emma accepted the handshake briefly. "He'd say I was already a good student. Sometimes the right teacher just helps us discover what's already there." 2 weeks later, Emma stood at the newly established training range at the Veterans Support Foundation's Rehabilitation Center, funded by Blake's donation and contributions from manufacturers. Her first class consisted of 6 veterans, each carrying visible and invisible scars from service. "Good morning," she began, her voice steadier than it had been in years. "My name is Emma Miller. I'm not a soldier or a champion, just someone who learned that sometimes the steadiest hands belong to those who've endured the greatest shaking. Today we begin with the fundamentals: how to stand, how to breathe, how to focus." 6 months later, at the Foundation's fundraiser, Emma addressed the gathering. "1 year ago, I walked into a shooting range for the first time in 3 years, keeping a promise to my late husband. I expected to reconnect with a skill he taught me, then return to my quiet life. Instead, I found myself in a confrontation that led to this program and the community we're building together." When the foundation announced the annual Nathan Ghost Miller Excellence in Marksmanship Scholarship for For veterans pursuing careers in shooting instruction, Emma felt tears rise. The first recipient, a former Army Ranger who had overcome profound injuries, accepted the award. Emma twisted her wedding ring one final time. "This one's for you, Nathan, for everything you taught me about standing my ground." Perhaps Emma's greatest victory wasn't defeating a champion who underestimated her, but finding her way back to the world, rebuilding a life that honored both past and future. For those who watched her journey, from being ignored at the elite shooters club to confidently leading the Foundation's programs, the lesson was clear. Never underestimate the quiet ones. Behind their silence may lie determination forged in adversity, skills honed through discipline, and values anchored in experiences few can comprehend. And if you ever find yourself dismissed or overlooked, remember Emma Miller's journey, from invisible to essential. How a woman once ignored at a shooting range transformed a moment of disrespect into a movement of respect, one perfect shot at a time.